Hi, this is Rachel in Recovery. We're here with Julie Ann Smith, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, and then she's going to answer some questions.
Hi, I'm Julie Ann Smith. I am a blogger at Spiritual Sounding Board beginning in 2012. I don't blog very much anymore, but my story in a nutshell is I was sued by my pastor, and that kind of got my start on my blog. In my personal life, I was married for 35 years. I have 7 children. I've dealt with a lot of religious trauma at church, of course, but also in my marriage. And I'm also a survivor of childhood abuse in my own home when I was growing up. So that's it in a nutshell. We could go on if you like.
Okay, let's get into the questions. What have you done for recovery?
Oh, wow. Well, as we talked a little bit earlier, part of this process of living, we deal with a lot of trauma. And so, like I mentioned in the introduction, that I dealt with physical abuse by the dad who adopted me. So that was from toddlerhood to about 19 years old. And there was also some other kinds of abuse going on in the home with my mom, who wasn't taking care of my medical health, my asthma. So she put me in harm's way. So I've had to deal with that. But when I lived in the Philippines, we dealt with a 7.9 earthquake, and I couldn't get over it. And I moved back to the States and moved in with my parents with my 2 little kids at the time. Because my husband at the time was sent to the Persian Gulf. And so I figured, well, I'll go back home to my parents and, get over this earthquake, because we were still experiencing aftershocks. Well, lo and behold, I'm in Oregon and I'm feeling earthquakes, but there really were no earthquakes. And it looked like the chandelier on my dining table, my mom's dining table, was moving all the time. And I would say, Mom, do you see that? And she goes, no, it's not moving. And so, that made both of us suspect something is wrong with me. And what was going on was I was experiencing PTSD, and I was having flashbacks of the earthquake and nightmares, and, just hypervigilant, and I couldn't just settle. It was really, really difficult to live each day, to be a mom, to be present. And so my first thing was I went to a Christian counselor, and they called it biblical counseling. And that actually got me worse, because they had all these formulas: just pray more, just read the Bible more, do praise songs more, and you'll get better. Just have faith. If you just have faith, God will answer your prayers. And I did all those things, but God wasn't answering my prayers. And so that made me feel like God really hates me. And I felt really abandoned, and I was going downhill and feeling suicidal. And finally, my mom said, "You're not getting better. You need to get help." And she encouraged me to seek a psychologist. And so I did that. And this is in 1990. So, it's quite a few years ago. And that psychologist clearly saw that it was PTSD, and we began that recovery process. And it took about 3 years until I finally I didn't. One day I just realized, you know what? I haven't felt an earthquake. This is weird. I don't know what this is. This a new thing? Am I going to be able to go through a day without feeling an earthquake? And sure enough, I had done my work, and those earthquakes and flashbacks subsided, and then I was good. So I have to say, I also went inpatient during that time when I had to deal with some other emotional trauma from childhood. So that's one aspect of my recovery. Later on, when I dealt with spiritual abuse and I was sued by my pastor, I also went to therapy then. I was told, hey, this is such a big deal. You might need the extra help. But that wasn't particularly helpful because that therapist didn't understand spiritual abuse. So, and then I went to therapy again, going through my divorce, and I'm still currently in therapy, just about every other week, nothing major. But I've also done EMDR, which I have had pretty good results. It's really helped a lot. So, yeah, I've had many bouts of therapy through my life, and I love it. I think it's so important, especially those of us who've experienced trauma. Life gets confusing when you go through difficult things when you have trauma in your background. So it's a great tool to help keep you sane, above water, and just moving forward.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
What have you seen help with other people's recovery similar to yours?
What I've seen a common thread is, those who tell their story, I think, are some who really benefit a lot. And there's something very powerful about telling your story, because you get to say that narrative from your perspective. And in a lot of abuse, our abusers are trying to tell the story, and they're telling a distorted story, usually benefiting them. But when we tell our story, it's kind of like our brain gets to catch up with the reality of what actually happened. And hearing ourselves say it out loud to somebody else, I think, is absolutely crucial and a very important part of that healing process. And I've just seen it work so many times. And especially if you're especially if you're telling your story in a safe place.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
What have you seen as far as patterns in this type of abuse? With spiritual abuse primarily.
What have I seen as patterns? Well, are you talking about the patterns of the survivors, or
the patterns of the abuse, like maybe kind of the grooming process?
how do people in positions of authority?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that happens. It's pretty amazing. Cult leaders and high controlling church leaders, it's like they follow the same rule book. They know exactly how to do this gig, and typically you will find them love bombing. In our church situation, the pastor, unbeknownst to us, changed this his Sunday afternoon classes, his evangelism classes, because he knew that the new people coming in were really into evangelism. And so he started a brand new series. He started a brand new series on Wednesday evening about a different topic that people in our group were interested. There was a whole group of us that started going to this new church. And so he really changed everything to appeal to us. And that's called love bombing. And, so, we would be attracted to him and his message and want to stay. So I typically see love bombing and a concerted effort to try to bring somebody in and make them feel loved, make them feel welcome, pour out the red carpet. And then after you're in for a while, then you start seeing true colors. But that's a very common way.
That very much sounds like what you'd see in a domestic abusive situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I work with a lot of women who are in, very difficult, controlling marriages. And a lot of them didn't show these colors at the beginning. They were just wonderful, loving, kind human beings. And then once they got married, things started changing. Yeah. So I tell you, abusers, I don't know where this handbook is, but it's somewhere, and they've all read it.
No, yeah, most definitely. How has this impacted your community?
Well, in my church community, the one where the pastor sued me, he immediately, labeled me as divisive and, under the influence of Satan and all this kind of stuff. And so it caused more division in the church. There were those on the pastor's side and then those who were shunned. And so, everybody felt it. You had to pick a side. And if you picked my side, you were automatically shunned by the pastor and everybody in the church. So, it was very divisive and very, very uncomfortable. If you saw, a church member at the store that you normally would, go have coffee with or spend some time with, they would avert their eyes and walk the other direction. So it was very hurtful.
That is, it's heart-wrenching. And, I just talked to a lady the other day and she's like, yeah, no, when I lost all my friends and all my church friends the moment I spoke out.
Yeah.
And they're still.
Yeah.
And in small towns, I think it's even worse.
Oh.
I mean, I live in a city. If something like that happened, they'd be like, huh? Who? What?
Right. And when you think about the fact that your church is kind of like your safe zone, right? You're the key people that you associate with. And then to go cold turkey and, be told you can't connect with them. And this is where you pour your heart and soul into this group, and you do recreational activities along with ministry activities. And so and a lot of times in these groups, you spend so much time that you've already isolated the people around you, like your neighbors, maybe even your own extended family and friends. So that makes it very isolating when this kind of fracture happens.
Yes, most definitely. And I think that's what the perpetrator's goals are. And that's why when all this stuff kind of goes to court, they almost always side with the pastor.
Yes.
Because the pastor has done the groundwork, or whoever is doing the abuse has done the groundwork. They are playing advocate, and they love to do damage control if anybody speaks out against them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think I talked about that with Boz and I think Pete Singer. Mm-hmm. So that's huge. How has this impacted your dating life?
I wasn't expecting that question. What in particular? Which part?
Well, I mean, after going through all this spiritual abuse and the patriarchal, I mean,
yeah,
the ability to trust men again, or
that's a difficult process. So I have been doing online dating for over 2 years now, and so my new way of practicing my faith is different than it was 20 years ago, where I was a traditional, go to church every Sunday. I had it down, the normal way. Right. And now I'm in a different place. I do go to church. I have a great church, and they're very supportive, and they understand spiritual abuse. So, but as far as the dating aspect, I know what I can't have. And, one of the things in my marriage was, part of that story is that he changed his path and started believing a different doctrine. And I was so busy raising our 7 kids and homeschooling them that I didn't keep up with him. And, he really didn't share that with me. So what happened is that he thought that his way, that particular doctrine, was the only right way. And he internalized that. And so when I raised questions about that doctrine, it's Calvinism, by the way. And when I raised questions about it, and I said, I don't agree with that, he interpreted that as I'm being rebellious, I'm being unsubmissive. And no, that's not really what that is. That means I am an individual who has a mind of her own and decided that I don't agree with that doctrine. That's what that means. It had nothing to do with him. It had to do with the doctrine, but he internalized it. And, he went on a mission to, sabotage the rest of our marriage by saying that I was an unbeliever and unsubmissive and that kind of thing. So I'm very careful when I'm dating to ask, what do you believe? Do you believe the husband is the head of the home? I want to ask what denomination they are. I ask which kind of, Christian books they read, who are the authors that they read. I ask how would you be if I decided I'm not going to go to church some Sunday? How would you be if I said I'm not going to pray with you? Because my spiritual abuse journey and recovery, I give myself grace to miss a Sunday if I feel like, I just need time alone today. I don't, and so I want to make sure that the guy that I'm with, gives me that grace and that freedom and has that understanding of the path that I've gone on. So thankfully, I really haven't dated anybody that wouldn't go along with that. So that's been very helpful. But when you've gone through spiritual abuse in a marriage, that's something that you really have to be careful about in dating, because you don't want to get yourself caught up into something similar. But I'm an open book and I'm very transparent, and I just say I can't deal with this. If this is not who you are, then we probably won't be I just put everything on the table and make sure that we're compatible that way.
That's definitely the way to go.
Yeah.
How has this impacted your reputation, I guess?
Well, I have an online presence, whether I liked it or not, just because my story went so viral. And I was really worried about it because I had to go back to school and get my degree now support myself. And so my field is cybersecurity. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be really difficult because obviously, cyber professionals are going to look online and find me, right? But thankfully, the first manager who hired me, he has a little unconventional way of hiring people, and he was fascinated by my story. And it's pretty evident by, the stuff, if you read, that, I am truthful, and, the stuff that I have done online and advocacy work is, I have a good reputation about that. Now, of course, if you dig deeper, you can find the website by my old pastor, and he writes all these scathing things about me, but it's pretty evident when you read his writings, like, who is this guy? But, I think the deal is that when there is possibility that somebody may misinterpret what they read online about me, but I don't care.
Fair enough.
I just don't care, because the ones who need to know. And like I said, my manager knows. Now my new manager knows. They all know, and they all have great respect for what I've done in this realm. So it hasn't it hasn't harmed me, but if you don't have thick skin, it probably, it might harm you, so that is something when you go public that you do really need to consider. Is this something that I want to have to deal with? I mean, my kids can look up me and find crap on me, but they know me. So, it just depends on how grounded are you, and are you able to handle the negativity? Because whenever you do this kind of work, you better believe it. You're on the front line of being trash talked. But that's okay. I get it. I totally understand it, and I've been okay. I haven't had a problem. Yeah.
How has this impacted your social life?
Oh, not at all, really. I mean, well, I don't have I don't have much of a social life, because I work full time and I do this, advocacy work. I do spend quite a bit of time working with others who are, either spiritual abuse or in really challenging marriages and high controlling marriages. So, I do spend a bit of time, but I'm trying to get some balance there. But yeah, I mean, I've got great friends, and so it's, I'm in a new stage because I've had to change everything because of the divorce and everything. So I'm kind of trying to find my new norm now.
Fair enough. I guess how has this impacted your career? I guess we've
Yeah, we kind of
hit.
touched on that. A cool thing about that is because my managers understand that I really have good understanding of systems of abuse. They really listen to me if I say, I'm noticing something, and they give me that respect, and I think I'm kind of blown away at that, actually. But it's so, this all this work that I've done, in the spiritual abuse realm, and abusive marriages, Christian marriages, it's working in other environments as well, to have that kind of knowledge and to say, this really is not healthy. I'm really concerned about my teammates, that kind of thing. So it's been beneficial, and that's been awesome.
Okay. How has this impacted your parenting?
Oh, okay. So, my older kids clearly remember the cult church, and they were very affected by it. And all of, my youngest was only 2 when we were there, so he doesn't remember it. But, you know, part of that, dealing with the spiritual abuse, and then also dealing with the divorce and the confusing, Christian, how we worked out our faith and stuff. And so, what I do with my kids is I tell them, you know, I believe this. Your dad believes this. I want you to wrestle with it and research on your own. And you need to come to your own conclusions. Your faith is your faith, it's not mine. And you don't have to take my faith. You don't have to take your father's faith. You just need to do your work, and explore, and then find out what works for you and what fits for you and what you believe is the truth. So basically, I work really hard at giving my kids agency and letting them know that they need to own that themselves, that that's not something that I can carry for them or their father can carry for them. And so basically it's encouraging them to use and use their critical thinking skills.
Okay. No, I mean that's really good parenting that you're doing. How has this impacted your faith?
Yeah, so I've had to, after going through the spiritual abuse, It really did rock me to my core, because I was getting so many of the pastors really abusive spiritual messages that I was internalizing. And so it's kind of like I had to start with a clean slate. And I can't read the New King James version anymore because that's what he used. And um, I, you know, I'm just taking things slowly and um, I'm not buying what everybody says hook, line, and sinker. I challenge myself and I dig deeper on issues. But basically, I'm doing church light now. It feels better, and I there was just so much heaviness in what we were dealing with, and so I'm kind of making my own faith journey, and that probably would be shocking to the some that have um, were in my abusive church, and then they would say I'm apostate, and whatever, I don't care. My relationship with God is my relationship with God, and again, I need to own this journey. And so, yeah, it definitely has taken a toll on my faith, but I think I'm in a much healthier place now. I've dismissed so much of that unhealthy, really toxic, harmful teachings. So yeah, I think it's better, and it feels more genuine.
Most definitely. What do you do for self-care?
That's a great question. I work full time now, and so finding a good balance of working and then taking time to for myself. So, that's why I continue to do therapy, just to stay above board and just really be healthy. I just recently started bullet journaling. And in that journal, I do habit tracking and just different things that I've wanted to just ensure that I do each day. And, just to keep me on a forward motion of being healthy. And so some of that includes, I want to listen to music each day. I want to make sure that I spend quality time with friends in real life. I had an imbalance of primarily online friends because I just didn't have time to go out. But, like last night, I went out with a friend and had coffee, and it was just very nice to have those kinds of friendships. But I do dedicate a lot of time to really trying to ensure that I'm grounded and prioritizing my mental health. um, here's another a good example of that. I remember when I was in my darkest days that I couldn't keep up with my house, and it just became messy, cluttered, and life was too difficult just to do the menial tasks. Well, I'm noticing I really thrive in an environment that's tidy, where everything is put away. And so, I'm making that a priority. I mean, it seems basic, but, when you've dealt with, major depression and anxiety and stuff like that, these simple things you kind of forget. So, yeah, I'm just trying to live a healthy, balanced life with people, and giving myself space, giving myself room to grow, with really focusing on, um, you know, always improving.
Fair enough. Um, what would you say to encourage other survivors?
Well, kind of like I said at the very beginning, your personal story, I think, is a key to your recovery. And when you keep it locked up inside, um, I don't think you give it the time and attention it deserves. But having a safe audience and telling your story to somebody who is understanding and really wants to hear it and is has empathy and wants to connect with you, I think is life transforming. And it's not that they've done anything; it's that you've vocalized it and you've told your truth out loud. And like I said, something about your brain hearing that truth, and it's kind of like you validating yourself. It's very powerful. So if you're in front of, somebody who's a trusted, caring person who's also validating you, that's two of you validating yourself and the other person. And it's just very, very empowering. I think when I tell my story and speak it out loud, sometimes I solve my own problems that way. And it's like, wow, never thought about it. But if I kept it inside, I may not have come to that. So I am a huge advocate of telling your own story, whether it's, out loud in front of a safe person or, people did it on my blog as a safe place because I knew that other people could resonate with it. So somehow telling your story wherever that safe place is just so important.
Most definitely. I have another question that's very similar. What would you say is the most important piece of advice that somebody gave you in your journey of recovery?
Well, somebody gave this on my journey, but it really wasn't a part of my recovery. But I think that it can be adapted to recovery as well, and should be. And I was struggling with the idea that I am going through a divorce and I don't have the jobs. I don't have any job experience. I don't have a degree. I don't know how I'm going to survive financially. And this guy said to me, Julianne, listen, in 4 years, you can be exactly where you are right now with no degree, no nothing, just flailing along just like you are right now. Or in 4 years from now, you can be showing me your degree. What do you want? And I tell you, that kicked me in the rear end. And I think the same thing could be said about anybody in recovery. If you're at a place that you just know there's something better out there and you're just not happy or thriving in your life, then what I would recommend is, in 4 years, are you going to be saying the same thing to me? I'm just not happy. I'm not thriving. Or in 4 years, are you going to get the help that you need so that you can thrive and survive? I mean, not just survive, but thrive and just be happy and, having a fulfilled life. So I think that's so important, is that we don't settle for where we are if it's not a life of peace and hope and joy. So many of us who've experienced trauma, we kind of get stuck in difficult places, and it's hard to move forward. I mean, just to get the energy to move forward. But I'm saying, do you want to be where you are in 4 years, or do you want hope and joy? Go get it. Go get it.
Most definitely. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners that we haven't covered?
I can't think of anything, but I'm so appreciative of you reaching out to me and asking me these questions. And I'm just, this has been a lot of hard work to get to where I am. But it's so exciting to know what's ahead of me and what's ahead of others as I watch them tell their stories. That actually is probably my greatest joy, is when I see other people I've worked with who, were stuck just like I was, and watch them progress and get healthy and Many times they're often the ones who also come back and start helping others as well. So many of us are on this journey of recovery, and it's a beautiful place, and the people are absolutely wonderful, as you know.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening. Tune in on Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Time. You can always follow us on your favorite podcast platform or your favorite social media platform. And as always, reach out to RachelOnRecovery.com. Thanks for listening.